G'day and welcome to another big edition of the RDFNL Footy Show, previewing the big games of the RDFNL Final Series. Thanks to McDonald's. I'm joined by Tara Murray from the Star Weekly, and we're going to pick apart the big second semi-final. We've got the Boroughs and the Cats going toe-to-toe at Clark Oval. What a game this promises to be.
It is, and looking earlier in the season, a lot of people would have said this was a possible grand final matchup, and it still could be. You've got both these sides. One side will go through the grand final, the other a prelim, so they've both got that double chance and still could be a grand final matchup.
Now, these two are no strangers to facing each other in the final series, with Diggers Rest getting the win, I think, on four or five occasions, I think, over the last decade, which is phenomenal. How do you see this one sort of panning out? You
say those stats, but Diggers Rest probably has a winning finals record over 99% of the teams over the last decade. They've been in part of so many grand finals. This will be really interesting. We saw these two teams play each other in the final round of the season, and the Diggers Rest were absolutely smashed that day. Mm-hmm. But they rested players. They didn't take much out of it. They look at little bits and pieces, but it's a completely different ball game. So obviously these two teams had good wins on the weekend. Very different. The Cats had to come from behind. They had a poor first half where the Diggers Rest started really well. So I think it's going to be a very close match, and both these sides I think are going to be close to full strength. I know the Boroughs will have it. Lockie Langford should come back in. Stephen Rion, and I think Chris Lawson's another one that could possibly come in. And if those three come in, I know Sean Sims was saying it's probably the strongest side they've had all season, so they've sort of timed everything perfectly to have all those players on the park for finals.
And the beauty is this: the reserves will be playing on the same day as well, so they've still got they can still get some informed players from that team should they need to sort of stock up for that particular contest.
It is. I think they've got plenty, so most of their players are going to get a game this week, which is what you want coming into finals, that if you've got players that are on the edge of the side, that they're still getting a game whether or not they're playing seniors.
Exactly right. Now, Macedon, I think one of the tricky things for them this year is that when they have lost or have even just got over the line, it's been the starts. If the opposition, like Diggers did in their first matchup of the year, got away to a hot start, that played a big part in the context because as we've sort of spoken about at the start of the year, I think Macedon had a record of over 40 goals to maybe 3 in ratio of first quarter start. So it goes to show if you get a good strong start against the Cats, then you're going to be in for a good day, potentially. But
then I don't think we're going to have the Cats have a start like they did last week. I can't see them having that 2 weeks in a row. And it's probably a little bit hard to compare the two games on the weekend because they played in very different conditions. We had no rain. The weather wasn't even too bad at Romsey Park on the Saturday, where on the Sunday you had snow at times, you had hail, you had rain. So it's hard to compare the two games because they were played very, very differently.
But who wins that game? If we saw Sunday conditions and the Cats were playing Diggers Rest in Sunday conditions, I mean, they were extreme conditions, but looking at a wet, heavy track, who wins?
I still go for the Cats. I think they've got a lot of good ball users, and you need that in those wet conditions. So if you can get those players with the good hands on the outside and getting the ball into their forward line, makes it dangerous. You look, their leading goal kicker is Jason Cook, who's not a traditional forward. He is a smaller forward, so he can get the ball on the ground, which makes him very, very dangerous.
Now, I did say last week that the winner of the qualifying final would go on and win the full thing, and the Cats did do that. However, I'm going to change my having seen Diggers up close and personal on the weekend, I just think when they get to the finals, they do some damage. And I know they've played a lot of grand finals over the last decade, which has been a testament to the club to be able to keep quality players coming through. But the second semi-final, they haven't generally made the grand final via a prelim. When they've been making grand finals, second semi-finals has been where they've done the damage. And if history repeats itself, where they have the wood over the Cats and they do win second semi-finals, I'd be worried if all the other teams sort of looking to face them, because I think they're a red-hot team ready to go.
Well, it is interesting, but you say that a couple of years ago they made the grand final through a prelim when the Redbacks went through undefeated. So That's only a few seasons ago, so they have done it both ways. I think a very interesting match. It's quite possibly these two sides will both face off in the grand final from what we've seen in the first week of the finals.
Based on the form line, who sort of stood out for you for the Cats on the weekend?
It was their big names in the second half. So obviously you had Sean Harrison came into the game, Casey Summerfield, also Dan Markworth had a lot of the ball early but didn't really use it. So those guys sort of stood up, and then you had Burgess down the back, probably an underrated player. He really stood up. So there was quite a number of players that did did jobs at times. Tommy Waters is another one, obviously with Dean Putt going down injured. He made the most of that opportunity. So sort of their bigger names. You need some of their lesser names coming up, and Burgess is probably one of them. They need a few more of them to stand up if they're to be a bit more consistent, I think.
And I think that's the key thing. It is consistency, whereas we look at the Burrows lineup, they don't have the standouts. They don't, probably not too, when you Taylor Hines and your Carl Mortons, etc., that when they get going, they're on fire. But I just think that the overall balance of the 22 at Diggers Rest, there's probably not so much separating maybe 6 from maybe 15 or something. They've got quality right across the board, rotating off the bench.
And even that, I think overall as a squad, Diggers Rest is a lot stronger. You've had that many players come in and out of the side this year. I think they've used 44 players across the year, and they're now playing off for a grand final spot. Most sides, if you were using 44 players, you'd be down towards the bottom of the ladder and saying you're trying to get players into the side. So they've probably got a lot more depth across the side, but Macedon have more stars.
So if Macedon were to win on the weekend, who's that one player that puts their hand up and goes, yep, I'm going to lead the way?
I'm expecting Jason Cook to have a big game.
Because he had a quiet one last week.
He had a quiet one, and obviously, speaking with Jeff Andrews, he said that was probably partly his fault because he left him in the forward line that first half. So he plays he probably does spend about a quarter of a game in the midfield, and he wasn't used in that midfield in the first half. So they put him in the midfield after half time, and he got a bit more of the ball. So he's had a poor game. I think he 1 goal. Mm-hmm. And whether it's wet conditions, dry, I think they both suit him. Yeah,
it's just a matter of how they use him, whether they put him in the midfield a little bit sooner, just get his hands on the ball, which is crucial. What about for Diggers Rest?
I'm going to put one of the younger players, Corey Wright.
Yep, he was best on ground on the weekend.
That's it, he was best on ground. You've got an 18-year-old who started in the centre, who wasn't part of their grand final side last year, so most people wouldn't expect that. But you've got a young guy, can he stand up to that pressure for a second week in a row? If he can, against those stars of the Macedon midfield, will go a big way for Diggers Rest winning. So ultimately, when the siren sounds to end the contest, who's ahead and by how much roughly? I'm still tipping the Cats. Yep. But I think it will be a close one, so it might only be 2-3 goals in it. I know I've got a lot of trust in the old Macedon faithful down there, but I just think just the way Diggers Rest are playing, and look, I spoke to Randy Pereira over at Melbourne Centrals, who's the A grade coach at the moment. And I said I'll put you on par the A grade netball side with the senior football side of Diggers. You get the finals, doesn't matter where you finish. You're going to you're a red hot chance to make the big dance. Doesn't matter as long as you make the finals. I think Diggers Rest of that side. I just think they've got a little bit too much depth across the board, and they don't have sort of a set lineup. They can sort of move players around a little bit so that they can, they've got your plan B's, C's, D's, etc., which I think will be handy. And I know Macedon have got them too, but I just think that quality across the 22, which we spoke about earlier, is going to be enough to get them over the line. Only just at Clark Oval, and I think that's the other thing as well. Clark Oval. Bigger ground suits Macedon a heck of a lot more. Exactly. You've got those players who can run, and that's what they've probably got a bit more pace. Obviously, Diggers have your Cale Morton, your Taylor Hines, similar sorts of players, but I think Macedon has a bit more depth in that area. Yeah, it shapes up to be an exciting contest. So we're both sitting on different sides of the fence on this one, which is great. It's certainly going to make for a very interesting day. We'll rest assured the team at Highlands FM, they're all pumped and ready to go, and I will jump on the defence this week because we had to pull the pin. I'll say we, but the station had to pull the pin on Sunday afternoon due to horrendous conditions where basically the gear was getting all wet and run the risk of getting electrocuted, hence why the game did not finish, not get completed in the senior game last week. So I'll put that out there. It was a dangerous risk to go with, so... But the boys will be out there again, ripping it up, and it should be a fantastic afternoon of football. And they'll be on air from 9:30 in the morning, so broadcasting all the teams that are the first teams will be making the grand final in 2017. And this season is just going to get better.